Fantastic. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Mathieson. I'm here in Auckland in New Zealand. I'm the founder of Working in New Zealand, and we specialise in helping people from all around the world move to New Zealand, which is interesting at the moment. It is happening, but it's definitely interesting. I have a couple of panelists on today from who are working in people who have been working with us for years. So we've got a tremendous amount of experience in the room to help you understand what the journey to New Zealand looks like, because even though it's full of opportunity, there's never been a more challenging time to come down here. But it's good that you're here, because this is the first part of your journey, and we're here to help you. We're very passionate about that. So before I go any further and take you through the whole webinar, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. In Auckland with me in our office at Working In is Nassim Lalehzari. She's our lead immigration advisor, been with Working In for over 10 years. Nassim, can you introduce yourself to the people, please?
Hi everyone, my name's Nassim. I've been with Working In for 10 years. I originally studied law in Australia, got admitted to the bar, married a Kiwi, as most people do, as part of their migration to New Zealand, and joined Working In, where I've helped thousands of people make the move over to New Zealand.
Thanks, Nassim. Yeah, and thousands of people being the operative word there. We have literally brought in, if not thousands, tens of thousands of people into New Zealand. And our other panelists in the UK, enjoying lockdown or not, is Paul Goddard. Paul has worked for Working In for many, many years. Paul, can you please say a few words about your interesting life to date?
Yeah, my name's Paul. I've been a licensed advisor for years now. Lived in New Zealand for nearly 18 years. So moved there in 2002, 2003. Had the whole thing documented by the BBC for 2 TV documentaries, which was an interesting start to the life. I wouldn't advise it for anyone, but it was a good experience. Wrote a book all about it and had that published. That was great. And like Nassim and Scott, I've helped thousands of people move over the years. Currently back in the UK, just because I need to be right now. Wish I was back in New Zealand, and we'll get back over there very soon. But I wanted to move for a better lifestyle, and New Zealand gave me that lifestyle. My kids grew up there. My grandson was born there, and it's a great place to be. So you're all in the right spot.
Well, it is a good spot to be today. I can say that we are here in level 1. Which means that there are no restrictions on lockdown. We were in lockdown in Auckland for a few days, a couple of weeks ago, because there was some community transmission. But generally speaking, across New Zealand, there is no community transmission. And essentially we are, in a good position for COVID. I would say, however, that because we're COVID-free, relatively speaking, that's not the reason to move to New Zealand. Immigration is for life. It's a long process, and it's really important that you make informed decisions about moving to New Zealand, because what we see is people who move here and have really researched it, really are committed to it, are very, very happy with the outcome. But if you're reactive or moving on a knee-jerk, then it's not necessarily the right reasons to move, and then you end up on the other side of the world. So that's just a caution. The other thing I'd like to note is that both Paul and Nassim are licensed immigration advisors, and behind me you'll see these certificates, and those are our certificates showing that we are licensed immigration advisors, but there's actually 8 at Working In. And what that means is that we are mandated by the government. Everybody who is a licensed immigration advisor has to renew their license every year, and it gives you as the migrant a lot of protection. So for example, when you pay money, it goes into a trust fund. That trust fund is protected. The money is not released until the work is done. You've got a complaints procedure, and all these sort of things means that we have to be squeaky clean. We are squeaky clean anyway, but it means that we have to be. But it also gives you a lot of assurance, because the reality is that you only migrate once, hopefully, and only use this process once. So it's got to be safe for you, and that's a big part of what we do. Okay, So let's get into the detail. As I've already told you, we are relatively COVID-free down here at the moment. But the key thing is that New Zealand needs healthcare professionals. And it's not because of COVID, it's because we have an aging population. Those people that were born after the war are rapidly approaching retirement age. And New Zealand didn't sort of have enough people born from 1960s onwards to replace those people. And the reality is that over the next 10 years, like a lot of Western countries, we're facing a shortage of healthcare workers. So there's a massive opportunity for people to move here because your skills are in demand. However, there is an issue around how we get here because immigration is changing all the time. And I guess the biggest problem is that you need a job before you get a visa. It's the catch-22, and that's very difficult getting a job from offshore, which is why we're here. Paul, I know you've had a lot of experience dealing with people around this particular issue. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And obviously this is a webinar for health professionals. So a lot of people assume, around health professional roles, especially these roles where as a health professional, that your skills are in demand pretty much anywhere in the world. It gives you an opportunity to move around the world. And some people make an assumption that because of that, it's going to be easy. It's going to be really simple. Nurses move all the time. I don't need help and it's going to work. And we know the reality because we see a very different side of that. And what you have to understand, really, to understand the catch-22 is the catch-22 exists because employers are not required to be licensed immigration advisors or fully understand how the process works. They're not up to date with every single change in immigration policy and everything else. And that causes a lot of risk for the employer and for you if you're looking to move. The way around the catch-22 is to have licensed advisors who can assist the employer as much as they can assist you as the people who are trying to move. Because if you don't remove the barriers that exist between you and the employer, you've got this catch-22 of I can't get a visa because I haven't got a job. I can't get a job because I haven't got a visa. Employers are reluctant to engage with me or hire me or even talk to me because they don't know if I'm going to get there, when I'm going to get there, can I get there, will I stay when I get there? And if you're not addressing those issues, then it's hard for the employer to move forward. And the trickiest part of it is proving it as well. I mean, you can tell an employer you're fully prepared and ready to move. That doesn't actually fully answer the questions or the doubts or fears they've got around hiring you. So that's a sort of brief summary of the catch-22, but that really is the nuts and bolts of it. You've got to remove the barriers for the employer.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Good points. Just a note, I'm seeing there's quite a few comments coming through. We will try and answer as many comments as we possibly can during the course of the webinar, but we're keeping this to half an hour. So we will be answering those questions. If we don't answer those questions for you in the webinar right now, we will be sending out a Q&A after. So thanks very much for understanding that. Nassim, from an immigration perspective, for healthcare professionals, as Paul has alluded to, it is slightly different. Can you explain how immigration policy works, and in particular for healthcare professionals?
So obviously at the moment, the borders are closed, so there's an additional layer, so to speak, with regards to the migration process. But traditionally, or once you're on shore, healthcare professionals are able to apply for any of the available temporary or residence pathways to live and work in New Zealand. So we've got, the skilled migrant, which is the way that most people in New Zealand traditionally have always qualified for residence. It's a points-based system. You get points for your job, your qualifications, your work experience, all of those sorts of things. And then with the temporary visas, you've got what we currently call the essential skills, or you might fit one of the skills shortage lists that allows you to qualify under the long-term skills shortage, which is a work to residence visa. So what's important to know is that those policies are still continuing in the background, but because of COVID, we've also got this additional layer, which is the border exemption process. So the government has rightly identified that healthcare professionals are very, very important, and they need to still be allowed into the country. There needs to be a pathway or a mechanism to allow them to do that. So we're able to get people in through that channel at the moment. So for a lot of the guys that we've been meeting through these webinars that are then working with us on the visas, and even since we started doing this, we've had multiple people arrive in New Zealand with their jobs, go through the MIQ process, and are now living it up on the West Coast or whatever. So there is just this additional step at the moment, which is the border exemption visa process, only because of COVID.
Thanks, Nassim. So just to be clear, there's a residency pathway. There's two residency pathways. One's employer-led, and the other is points-based. Yeah. Okay. Now, what's the age limit for the points-based? People are asking this all the time.
Yeah. So currently, for residents under the skilled categories, or based on the fact that you've got a skill that New Zealand needs, you needed to have applied for your residence application before your 56th birthday. 56th,
okay. But if you're coming here on a temporary work visa, is there an age limit?
No, there's no age limits for almost all of the temporary work visas. The only time that there would be an age limit imposed, which is again the 56, is if you're applying to one of those work to residence visas, because you'd need to be 56 before you applied, because they're basically approving your residence sort of halfway through the process. But most people that would never be a concern, and we've got individuals that are nurses here that are well over the age working on visas.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think the other thing that we should really understand is that for some people they may not be eligible to actually migrate, even though you might be on the skills shortage list, or even though you might have all the qualifications. There are instances where you're not eligible. Nassim, can you sort of run through some of the scenarios where someone might not be eligible, or who think they might be?
Yeah, so I think what's important to note is that everyone is quite unique. Your circumstances will be unique, and you can't compare one nurse to another. You would have studied at different places, you'll have different experience, you'll be different ages. So when you're looking at the different pathways, when we look at residents, if you are of the right age and you don't have necessarily enough points, sometimes there are ways to get those additional points, whether it's additional course of study, some extra work experience, whether that's offshore or here in New Zealand. If you have a partner, what their qualifications are, do they have a job? So there is sometimes ways in which you can increase those points and make it that you do qualify. But it might not be today. It might be that you have to start planning now to be able to qualify in 2 years' time. So it's about preparing in most instances and working out what that immigration strategy for you is going to be.
Yeah, okay. So Paul, I mean, one of the things that we offer, which we really believe and encourage people strongly to do, is an eligibility assessment, which is the very first thing that you do in order to actually understand whether you meet the criteria. And that kind of sets you on a pathway. You're saying to yourself, oh, gosh, I can migrate. Boom, I'm in. And that sets off a whole train of momentum towards migration. Or as Nassim said, no, I can't make it. But if I do this, I could. Have you got experience around that? Or can you talk about that a little bit more? Because it's the first part of the process, right?
Oh, absolutely. Before you spend thousands of pounds and thousands of hours and everything else on doing this, you've got to sort of get off the internet a little bit and get off that circle of just research, which isn't actually getting you anywhere. And an eligibility assessment, or what we call a warrant of fitness, which anyone who has been to New Zealand, Australia will know. A warrant of fitness is what we call an MOT over here in the UK for a car, and it checks your car's all roadworthy. And warrant of fitness is a really good description, actually, because it's not technically really just an eligibility assessment. It's not just us telling that you're eligible for a visa, because let's be honest, a lot of you on here probably already know that you're eligible for visas, and that doesn't really help. This is way more than that. It is looking at you, it's looking at your family, it's looking at your situation, it's looking at your budget, it's looking at your timeframes, it's looking into see if you meet immigration criteria, and it's actually us looking to see if we can help you, because there's no point us offering to help you if we can't add benefit to what you're trying to do. There's a lot of people in touch with us. We help a lot of people move, but we need to know that you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. And that really is what the warrant of fitness or the eligibility assessment is. And it's essential. The amount of people over the years who have told me that they wouldn't be in New Zealand right now if they hadn't committed to that eligibility assessment right at the start. It was the one thing that gave them clarity, it gave them a plan, it gave them a route to New Zealand, and it outlines everything. You take this step, followed by this step, do this, remove that barrier, get over that hurdle. And if you do all those things, you're in the best position to move to New Zealand. And that is the catalyst that starts it all. It really is the first step.
Exactly right. So I think we've emphasized that point. And I think one of the things about it from an emotional point of view is that it sets you free. And I think that's, philosophically or psychologically or from your soul, it's really empowering. And that's what I love about it. Paul, you've mentioned about jobs and the employment market, and I think a really, really interesting thing, like we have full respect for everybody who's on a webinar. Unfortunately, employers who are busy day to day, they look at a CV from overseas and they discount it because it's definitely in the too hard basket. One of the key tips that we will be saying to anybody here is please don't apply to any jobs right now. Because you can actually do more damage or more harm than good. Because if you're not prepared and you're not up to the starting line, then the employer will discard you, and it might impact how they view you in the future. Paul, again, any comment around all that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a saying, some people on you may have heard it, you've only got one chance to make a good first impression, and you don't want to waste that opportunity. If you go and approach an employer and you're not ready to move, or you don't know how you can prove that you're ready to move, or you haven't got everything in place, or you don't know what's coming next, then you are potentially wasting that massive opportunity to make a good impression. If you can get yourself completely ready for the move and have everything in place and show the employer that everything is in place, and have somebody represent you to that employer who can tell them that everything's in place, and the employer thinks, well, wow, all I've got to do is offer this amazing person a job and everything will be okay. That is much better than, oh, look, there's a job online, here's my CV, and a CV lands on your desk from 12,000 miles away. And, usually 9 times out of 10 immediately goes in the too difficult basket, and employers get thousands of CVs. New Zealand's a popular place, and in healthcare especially. And the health boards are big organizations, and sometimes communication isn't the best when you get a big organization and one department doesn't talk to another, and CVs can just sort of get lost in the system and you don't hear back and everything else. And it's just not a smart move to do what everyone else is doing, which is randomly firing off CVs.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Paul. I mean, that's clear as well. Nassim, with the healthcare professionals, however, from an immigration perspective, there are things that they can be doing right now in terms of registration and such forth. Can you engage everybody on what they need to do? Not just the nurses, obviously there's a nursing registration board, but all health professionals have a registration board, correct?
That's correct. So all medical professionals, like in any other Western country or actually really anywhere in the world, you need to have your registration in order to be able to do that job and to prove that you're at the right standard and you meet the necessary competencies to be entrusted with that care. It's part of immigration policy in New Zealand that you must have your registration in order to be issued the visa. The reason for that is they can't issue a visa to do a job if you haven't proved that you can do the job. They're not going to hand out visas for people who say that they're, for example, a radiologist and they've never worked as a radiologist, so there's those things to take into consideration. It's important to start your registration as soon as possible because it does take time. Now, it always took time. COVID's made it worse. You've got these extra layers of time that you need to allocate. You're trying to contact different schools or places that you've worked in order to have your evidence forwarded on your behalf to the relevant authorities. This all takes time. People are working from home, so it's taking longer. But what's important is that you do start it and that you you don't give up and you keep pushing, and you keep pushing that application process through the necessary channels so that you can get your New Zealand registration with the relevant board, because on that basis we're then able to submit the visa application.
Absolutely crystal clear. So I'm going to re-emphasize that because it's so important that if there's one thing that you can start now, it's the registration process. So either contact us or look online and start the registration process. It does take a long time. It's taking longer than ever, not necessarily the actual administration and assessment of your application, but actually collecting the documents from all around the world. I know I'm repeating you, Nassim, but that is the thing that slows down the process. And what's happening now in New Zealand is really interesting, is because of COVID, it is becoming more and more popular. A lot of people want to move here, and you need to see yourself like that you're in a queue. And there's hundreds, if not thousands of people and health professionals that are joining that queue and to move here. So you want to be as far to the front of that queue as possible, so that when things do relax a little bit and the borders do open a little bit more, you're not waiting months or if not years for your approval. So the thing that will slow you down is that whole registration process. I see that some people on this are already gone through their registration process. Absolutely fantastic. Our clients, our employers throughout the country will be interested in talking to you ahead of visa lodgement. So contact us directly, and we can assist you with that. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes to go. Paul, I know that you've been doing this for a very long time. What from your perspective can you offer? Specifically, we're being quite general here. There's a lot of people from all over the world here, different occupations. I guess what we're saying is that what is the next step? The next step really for us is a workshop, which we can get down a little bit more detail about what you need to do, a step-by-step process. If this is exciting you, if you think that New Zealand is the place that you want to move to, can you detail that out a little bit more, please? What that workshop entails?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. I mean, yeah, look, I'm sort of trying to read all these questions that are flashing up as we're talking, and there's loads of them. And look, I don't think anyone there is asking a question that we haven't been asked before. So and every case is different. And knowing how to do this, these questions around registration and stuff come up a lot, in particular with nurses. And one of the things that we do, if you actually, become clients of ours, and if we actually help you, is, we don't keep you isolated from our other clients. We put you in a private Facebook group with them. Now, some of these are nurses who are going through the stage that you're at. Some of them are already got registration. Some of them are actually been living and working in New Zealand for years. So you instantly get this massive support network. Now, that's if you're a client. Now, what Scott was talking about is prior to that, the next step from here is we're going to invite you all to a workshop, which is like this. It's online, and it's a longer thing. It's usually an hour or so, and I'll be hosting it. And what we'll do in that workshop is I'm going to go through the step-by-step details that you need to follow, all the steps, the 4 steps to get you over to New Zealand. Those 4 steps are preparation, employment support, visa applications, relocation support. That sounds very logical and simple to understand, and it is, but you'll see in the workshop, the devil's in the detail. Every single one of those steps has its own barriers and hurdles to overcome. And it's only when you understand what those barriers and hurdles are that you can then see what the solution is and why those barriers and hurdles can be removed. And that's what actually puts you in that best position to do it. And also we'll do, what I do at the end of the workshop is I do a Q&A session. So like today, where you're typing questions in, during the workshop, I'll spend some time at the end, because I love doing that bit, literally going through all those questions and answering those questions for you. And for some of you, the aim really is at the end of that workshop, you've got enough information to decide how to move forward, and do you want our help moving forward? And if you want our help, the next step from there is you get the warrant of fitness from us. That warrant of fitness also involves a one-to-one call with me after you've done it, once I've got all the information about you, where you're going to get all the personal answers to your personal questions. So this really is for those of you who can do it, it's a way forward. We're not just talking here, we're actually showing you how to do this and give you a way forward. So love to see you on that web shop. I believe it's next week and you'll get the invite.
Thanks, Paul. And just to interject you there, how much does that first stage cost, that eligibility assessment, the start of the process, really? Because obviously things cost, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Everything costs. It's £250 for that, what we call the warrant of fitness. As I say, it's not just to tell you that you're eligible, it's to actually sort of outline the way forward for you, which is what you need, you know, because without that, you spin around in circles, and it just clarifies everything and gives the risk. It's £250. Also in the workshop, we'll be going through all the other costs and budgets and things that you need to actually make this work for you, because you need to know those things.
Yeah. So just to be clear, that warrant of fitness is done by one of our licensed immigration advisors here in New Zealand. So it's all going to be very, very accurate. And yeah, it's kind of like that piece of paper that you go, right, this is my direction now. That's very, very helpful. So eligibility assessment and workshop, we can go through that in a little bit more detail. Nassim, it's 9:27 here in Auckland, 3 minutes to go. Do you have any comments in terms of wrapping up, or what final words that you should give to the visitors today?
I just think it's really, really important that everyone that is a health professional does register for our health workshop, because that will be the first step before you then sign up and do the WOF. We like using the term WOF because it really is a warrant of fitness. It works out what you need to check off, what's already done, what's still to be sorted. And, you know, myself or one of the other licensed advisors, the team here in Auckland, we do those assessments and our names are on the bottom saying, this is what we've decided is your way forward, which Paul then goes through with you. It's really important to get that sorted out, because a lot of the questions that I'm seeing popping up, and this has probably had the most questions I've ever seen of any of our webinars, it helps answer those sorts of things, and then you've got the tools to decide how you proceed.
Okay. Fantastic.
We can then, when we're liaising with employers, explain what you do or don't need to do, because that's a lot of what we do here in Auckland as well.
Manage it, yeah. We manage the, yep. Okay, Paul, final words, please.
Final words, really simple. Lots of people on here obviously doing stuff, looking at registration, going through registration, doing that. One question that you need to ask yourself is, if you keep doing what you're doing right now, will you get to New Zealand? And if you ask yourself and answer that honestly, the answer for most of you is no. Because, you know, I see it time and time again. You've got to do something more. You've got to commit. You've got to take a leap, but minimize the risk, maximize the opportunities. That's how you make the move.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, so look, one thing that I haven't mentioned is that on the workshop next week, we'll be inviting Jo Bradshaw, who's just sitting over there. I'm just going to actually pick up my phone and show you her face. So Jo is our lead health recruitment advisor here. So she's our international recruitment specialist in the healthcare area. So she'll be on the workshop next week, and we'll be able to go through a lot of detail around the registration process, the CVs, what clients want to see, the interview process. She'll always be talking to you before we put you in front of any employers and such and so forth. So I'm just going to go for a bit of a wander, and I can show you our office here. So behind me here, this is our immigration team. So we have about 20 people who day in, day out are helping people from all around doing the visas. And then over here, I'm going to show Jo. Do you want to say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone. I'll hopefully be speaking to you all next
I'm
week.
on my phone, so it's just a wave here. So this is our office anyway, here in Auckland. And I'm just going to show you, it's a nice sunny day. As you can see, no one's got masks on because we are out of COVID. Oh, it's sunny. One thing that you will need in New Zealand is sunglasses. So this is where we are in Ponsonby, which is about 2 minutes from the city. You might be able to hear all the cicadas, the locusts. Yeah, beautiful day in the middle of summer. So that's us. I wanted to show you a bit of our life, and wish you all good evening, good afternoon, and goodbye. And hopefully we'll see you down here. So thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you all. Bye.